first place. Then if that had been barred
but
from
that's
them,
not my question.
what? Okay, but what's your question then?
My question is, you're not saying education is oppressive. You're saying either going into debt or the society making a profit off education obviously puts burdens on the person who's taking loans out.
Yes.
We don't disagree with that.
Yes.
I don't disagree.
But why are we selecting for that then?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, you say that women need to be educated. Institutions are going to require capital in order to educate. So
Right. So if, again, we're going to... education has definitely benefited women in terms of having the equal access to
capitalism.
to certain aspects of society that would give them more opportunity and more identity.
It has literally led them to being pawns in capitalism.
Yep, just like men.
Yeah. So the thing is
I mean,
like,
if you think...
how is that? But how is that less oppressive? It's way more oppressive. So this is what I don't
I
get.
would say
like,
choice and individuality.
like,
so if we're talking about certain social ideas.
Yeah, let's walk through it logically,
Okay.
right? So we start with women can't accrue no debt. Only their husbands can accrue debt. That's it. Only the husbands were able to accrue debt.
But then they're uneducated, correct?
No, they could still be educated.
How?
They would go to school.
Where?
Well, they had public school was available. By the way, women have always done better in public school. And then college was also available to them. Most of your first wave feminist leaders went to school. They went to college.
Right, but college was also free then.
No, it wasn't free.
Yeah, it was.
Where?
In the United States.
Where?
Like what specific college? I think Berkeley was free up until the 60s.
Okay. So when you're talking about college fees, it's important to understand that if it is the case that you want everybody to do a thing, you're going to have a lot of that thing for them to be able to do it. Mm-hmm. So when you're talking about education specifically, it used to be about rewarding the best and brightest. It is not about rewarding the best and brightest now. There's lots and lots and lots of people who go and get a college degree, and it's the equivalent of like a 10th grade education, 9th grade education, right?
Okay.
So if that's the case, right, all we're doing really is just lowering the standard anyway. Right? Lowering the standard and then telling women that they need to go and use their birthing years in college, which makes no sense to me. It's very silly. You take the reproductive years, you say go spend the reproductive years in school so that you can be part of this capitalist machine. That's very strange to me that that's your advocacy as a Marxist feminist.
I mean, obviously, if we're talking about the ideal situation, then women would have access to education without having to go into debt.
That's not, well, okay. How?
What do you mean, how?
Yeah, how? So we should pay for everybody's college.
Well, obviously, if we're going to live under a capitalist society, like this, at the center of that is going to be profit. So I just think that's an ineffective way to organize society, because then it's obviously putting profit over people.
So now this is circular now. So we start with capitalism's bad, liberate women so they can participate in capitalism. Capitalism's bad, liberate women so that they can become part of the capitalist machine.
No. So if we're going to talk about how women can have more opportunity and individuality over in capitalism, that's one argument. And then talking about how women can be fully liberated from the constraints of capitalism is a different argument.
Well, okay, but let's talk. If you want to dice them up, I'm willing to like dice the arguments up as small as you want to make them, or as large as you want to make them. So we can go as granular as you want.
Well, I'm just saying it's two different lanes,
Or we
and it
can
seems you can be combining it as one.
Okay, but what's the goal of Marxism? Stateless society, right?
Yeah.
I still don't understand how throwing women into the big capitalist machine as a form of liberation helps get us to that.
It doesn't.
Then why would you? I still am confused why you support those things.
I mean, I don't support necessarily like what you're specifically saying. If I had my like, how do we transition from capitalism to communism, is a different argument than how can women suffer less oppression under capitalism.
Yeah, but if you don't agree with those things, and first wave feminism was about liberation to participate in capitalism, then you don't support first wave feminism.
I don't like classifying feminism in terms of those waves, because it just reduces it down to a singular idea where there are multiple sects of ideas. So yes, if you want me to say I don't agree, I don't agree.
Okay, but what are the prominent ideas then?
Sure. Yeah.
The prominent ideas were
Yeah,
definitely...
I don't agree.
Yeah. So
If
then,
that's what you want me to say.
So then I don't know that you're a feminist at all, just a Marxist.
Well, I mean, have you heard of TERFs?
Yeah.
Would you say that's a form of feminism?
It's a very traditional form of feminism.
Yeah, I'm not a TERF, so does that mean I'm not a feminist? I feel this is like no true Scotsman fallacy.
No. I have to say there are prominent sects of feminism, right?
Yeah, you have radical feminism, liberal feminism, intersectional, Marxist.
Yeah.
So I'm saying
But
there
all
are
of them
certain...
are basing it around the liberation of women. Just the different ideas around
Correct.
the basis
Just
of
like
the liberation of women.
there's capitalism,
Yeah.
which I'm sure we could define and say there's different
first wave
functions of capitalism.
Yeah, so first wave feminism definitely wanted to liberate women so that they could have their own assets and go to work.
Correct.
There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that.
I mean, go to work, like women have always worked, especially poor and women of color. So I think like going to work is kind of maybe like a white-centered notion. I will acknowledge that I think in the early 1900s we had about 20% of women in the workforce, and then by like 1950 I think it was close to 50.
Especially you had the post-World War II people who were staying in the workforce.
Sure, exactly.
But the thing
it depends
is,
on who you're counting
again,
as well.
Definitely first wave feminism was responsible for this. So the thing is I guess when you're talking about Marxist feminism specifically, you would have to kind of hate first wave feminism because it did
In
more...
a lot of notions I do, because I do think it ignored the material conditions of poor women, women of color. So yeah, I don't disagree.
Okay.
Just I'm sure you support capitalism, right? Mm-hmm. Do you like social democracy?
Well, I'm not sure that that's contingent on capitalism.
That is a capitalist mode, just like a laissez-faire free market would be.
Mm-hmm.
There's different ways that capitalism can be structured, and you can agree with one.
Yeah,
or
but
not.
Capitalism's an economic system. It's not as
Sure,
much
I'm
of a
just showing
political
how an
theory as Marxism.
idea. I'm just showing how an idea can have different theory behind it.
Yeah, I'm not disputing that. I'm talking about the prominence of the ideas themselves.
Sure, I guess if I must not have understood. No,
Yeah.
I don't agree with some of the modes that liberal feminism or first wave feminism, as you've called it, have used.
So then wouldn't you agree with me then that it actually would have been more liberating for women to not have participated in first wave feminism but instead relied on their husbands? Wouldn't that have actually been more liberating than sacrificing them to the sacrificial lamb of capitalism?
Which is worse? I don't know. There's just so many metrics that you can evaluate when it comes to...
Well, this is the metric we're evaluating. So the metric we're evaluating is, my argument is, if women are dependent on their husbands and accrue no debt, only the husband can accrue debt, but women can still own assets, which they could. And they could still own property, which they could, even if they were married.
Right, but you're
they
forcing
could.
a woman to link arms with a man. So if she's single, does she have access
As
to these
opposed
things?
to
If she's a
forcing her to go to
lesbian,
work.
does she have these things?
Yeah, they still, yes, of course.
How would you have these things?
How would they not have them? They were able to own property even unmarried. That's always been the history of the United States.
Well, right, but obviously then you would need to be in the workforce, correct? Because you need to purchase it?
No, you wouldn't need to purchase it. Oftentimes your father would give it to you.
Oh, so just through, again, like generational wealth.
Yeah. Which, by the way, first wave feminism destroyed a lot of that too. A lot of cross-generational wealth. But women could own property.
Sure. I mean, I would say, like, why would I have to pick one?
Because your choice is either you go to work, right? You either want equality or you don't want equality. So if the idea is I want equality, and that's what
I think it would be more beneficial for women not to be dependent on men and to have more liberty.
Than to work within the capitalist system?
Yes.
Why?
Because they would have more control, autonomy, and identity.
They don't seem to have more control over either of or any of those things. Example, the identity of woman now in modernity is in question, period.
What do you mean?
What is a woman?
Oh, we're going there now.
Well, you just said women would have more identity. Because
identity in terms of if you're going to be dependent on a husband, then your labor is predetermined for you. Your identity in terms of being a wife and mother is predetermined for you.
Yeah, but the beneficiaries of that is that your accruement of debt is also non-existent, and so you can never
It's
be a
not
slave
really
to
non-existent because
capitalism.
your husband has it as well. So I mean, there is still capitalistic threats.
You were not ever
and you don't
responsible
have-
for your husband's debt.
But you still suffer the outcomes if it doesn't work out, right?
Yeah, but you suffer the outcomes of that now under
Right, but
capitalism.
you would have more control and autonomy, right?
You don't
know,
seem
it's
to
either
have-
like you're
I
the
don't
captain
see
of
how
your own
women
sinking ship, or you're just kind of
I
a
don't-
passenger on the Titanic.
Like you use these words, these kind of buzzwords, right? You say they have more autonomy. Mm-hmm. How do women have more autonomy?
Self-determination through choice.
What choices? Which ones?
Essentially, how they want to experience their life. Do they want to get married? Do they want to have children?
They had the option to do that before. They didn't have to get married. Most of the time, women who didn't get married stayed at home with their parents. By the way, right now, most women who don't get married, they often stay at home with their parents. Not a lot has changed in that department.
I mean, I haven't read any statistics that women who don't get married just stay home with their parents.
Yes, it's often the case that women who do
that
not
true
get
with men?
married stay at home with their parents. Yeah,
Because
it's often true with men too.
I think single
and it was
women
often true with men
home,
then.
I think single women home purchases are starting to outpace men.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it
so
is
it
often
seems that
the
they're
case.
getting their own. They're getting their own house.
Sometimes, but you got to remember now, children are staying at home with their parents longer than
Sure. So
ever.
obviously, like the conditions that comes to capitalism now is different than it was, in the 1900s.
Yeah. So I mean, the thing is that I don't see how women actually have any more of these things. I don't see how they have any more autonomy. I don't see how they have any more actual choice. It just seems like an illusion of choice.
I would agree with you. There is some oppression within that choice, but I do think the choice is more.
Okay, and it's worth it to have this limited amount of autonomy in order to grind yourself in a capitalist system. Like if you were to ask the average woman, if you were to go back in time, hypothetically, and you were to sit down with first wave feminists, okay, who couldn't seem to get first wave feminism passed any other way than an amendment because women were voting it down all over the place. The question becomes, if you ask them, if we fast forwarded this to 100 years, I just want to let you know that your children will be living at home with you until they're 25. You will have access to college, but you'll have crushing debt, and chances are your marriage is going to fail. Chances are really good that your marriage is going to fail, over 50% perhaps, that your marriage is going to fail. But you'll have a little tiny bit more autonomy, but I won't even be able to exactly tell you how you have more of it. Do you think that they would go for that deal? Or if you said, hang on, or if you said to them, if you don't do this, your husbands will accrue all debt. You'll never have to worry about it again, and you can still make moral claims, and they'll be super effective, just like the temperance movement was, because now you're not political pawns.
I mean, I think you're kind of constructing the options in a way that would be beneficial to a specific narrative. I think I have cleared how you have autonomy. Like, would you want men to be dependent on women and have women be the predominant mode of production under capitalism?
I don't think it's possible.
But would you want that?
Well, I couldn't want a thing I don't think is possible.
Why?
Because it's not possible.
Well, I mean, why is it not possible?
It's not possible because women are not capable of doing the same types of things that men are capable of doing.
Such as?
Inside of society, enforcement.
Enforcement? So like police and
Not military.
military?